Good morning, guys. I wanted to talk to you today about the recent question that's been asked in our Telegram group. I wanted to discuss days on market and how to assess days on market, both on our suburb pages as well as on our main page, which we're looking at right now. So, firstly, before I show you how to filter things in and how to address the current values, I think it's important to note when it comes to the ranges for every single metric we have on our platform, you can always go to the data dictionary, and there's also a PDF version that you can download. Here in this data dictionary, not only do you have definitions of each metric, but some of them also have methodology articles written about them with hyperlinks that you can click on and actually explore and find out how we've derived or come about a certain metric. The underpinning of our platform is scientific. There's a lot of data science involved in creating some of these features, which completely differentiates us from our competitors. And typical price is also one example. It allows you to perform a much more granular research than median price, and has a lot more stability in the sense that you can make better decisions and predict more into the future. But today is about days on market, and also there's a special methodology when it comes to recording and publishing days on market. But in any case, you can find the definition of days on market in your data dictionary. But not only that, you can actually find the ranges: low demand, balanced, and high demand. So high demand will be anywhere between 35 days and below. What I wanted to talk about, just remember these ranges here for a second, and I'll go back to the home page to address the filtering. Two parts of the table that you look at from the onset. This part of the table is the RCS, and these are the forward-looking indicators, 5 years and above. I'm not going to go into detail on how we calculate RCS score and what forms part of RCS score. I can do that in other video, and you can also explore our methodology articles. But you need to know that these are forward-looking indicators. Everything else in this table is a value at a particular point in time. So it is essentially fixed, if you will. You need both sides of the table to shortlist and come to a final selection of a suburb, and then to move on to suburb pages. But I don't think people realize that's how the table is divided into two different domains: forward-looking and current values. Current values are meaningless without understanding trends, which is why RCS is there to give you a bit of an indication of trends of all of these 80 metrics that you're looking at in the table. So going back to days on market, when you're setting days on market in these filters, what you're doing, you're actually setting current values. But that is only part of the story. Current values are all good, but you need to also understand trend. In my view, and what I prefer, I'd rather have a higher current value, but a trend that's nosediving, than a low current value, but a trend that's increasing. This is very important. And you will not know what the trend actually is until you go onto the suburb page and look at the line for the days of market. And because trend is important, and because this filtering up front only allows you to set the current values, there are certain tricks that you should employ, which would assist you to include all of the best possibilities out there. So going back to our dictionary, looking at this, I'm looking at these ranges. High demand will be 35 days and below. You can go ahead and set 35 days and below using this filter. By the way, you need to click on the expert. You get the drop-down menu, and then you can go to days on market, and you can say less than 35 days. Yeah, that's all good and well. You can do that. That's fine. But then the question, if you think about it a bit further, the question can come up, and you can get a question in your mind, essentially, is what I'm trying to say, if you're thinking, if you're analyzing. And you can ask yourself, okay, Matt, I've just put 35 days, but what if there's a suburb out there that has a days on market with 40 or 40 days and a beautiful trend, the trend that's coming down? I would personally want to include those as well, because trend equals direction. And even though it's sitting potentially in a balanced range, looking at the data dictionary, so balance will be between 35 and 90. 90 and above is, low demand. So to make sure that you get all of the suburbs that have a nosediving trend, you can relax your filtering and actually don't be too rigid and set it at 35. Set it at maybe 40 or even 50 and see what you get. By the way, when you're filtering on the suburb page or when you're filtering on the main page, you're going to introduce a multitude of filters. If you're introducing only days on market, for example, and let's switch to suburb pages, you are culling the database from 6,000 entries to 2,000 entries. So you have a lot of entries there, and you cannot primarily search on the basis of days on market. The more filters you introduce, the more narrow the database becomes, but the choices that you delineate become more relative to your, or relevant, to your strategy and your financial needs and what you want to get out of investing. I'm looking at days on market at the moment only, and you have 1,937 entries. If you want to set the value higher, to make sure that you also collect those with a balanced score and yet a nosediving trend, you can do that. And let's say you can set it to 50, but make sure that when you introduce all of the other metrics as well, which will be maybe 10 or 5 or 6, whatever it is, make sure that the final selection that you come to is not more than, 20, let's say. Because if you have 20 suburbs to analyze individually, you'll be forced to open up all of the suburb pages and go one by one and analyze all of the metrics in the suburb pages. And having 20 there is actually a lot. So always try to maybe have a cap of 15. And if that's the case, if you're getting too many, you go back and you make the filtering more rigid. You can also use the platform and explore and just see whether there are suburbs with 50 and above days in market that are taking a nosedive and take a note of those. But essentially what I'm saying is that your filtering should be flexible. Yes, you have the ranges on our website, which you should take note of. But when it comes to supply and demand metrics, trend is sometimes actually more important than the actual current value. Having that in mind, do relax the filtering sometimes to try and retrieve suburbs that potentially have a balanced score in certain domains, and yet they have a very good trend. When it comes to trend analysis itself, I would like to address that as well while I'm here. This is an area that I haven't looked at before, and let's potentially find a better area because there's low volume of sales in this one. Let's use Camden, which is where so let's open it up. There are two aspects of trends that you need to analyze for all of the supply and demand metrics. And let's look at days on market now. You need to analyze the overall trend, which we have since 2020, that's 4 years. And you need to also analyze the recent trend. And that will be the last 3 or 4 or 5 quarters. And this is also done by the RCS, by the way. So the RCS takes into account both the overall trend as well as the recent trend. So the overall trend is increasing, but what we also see in this instance is that the recent trend is also increasing. And what that means is that the overall trend will be more and more increasing into the future, i.e. demand will be weakening more. So always address long-term and recent trend. Looking at the stock on market here, long-term trend is dropping, but if you look at 1, 2, 3, 4, last 4 quarters, in comparison to overall, let's say, we can say that the last 4 quarter stock on market is reducing as well. So you have an overall reduction in trend, but you also have a recent reduction in trend. This is essentially how you need to analyze trend. So to repeat, look at our ranges, don't set too rigid scores simply because you provided with an opportunity to potentially retrieve areas that have, let's say, a balanced score in a certain metric, and yet they have a very good trend. And then once you want to analyze the trends, make sure that you take into account both long-term trend and short-term trend for all of the supply and demand metrics. Thank you.